I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take every dollar I make and just pretend it's not mine. And when I have enough to basically live for a year, ramen noodles and beer, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to put all of my energy into this Greyscalegorilla thing.
This is Nick Campbell. He is the founder and CEO of Greyscalegorilla. They help thousands of 3D artists create realistic renders faster in Cinema 4D, Blender, Houdini, and Unreal Engine. Trusted by brands like Disney, ESPN, Sony Pictures, Microsoft, and many more. They've created more than 4,000 3D materials, textures, models, and a lot more, all in one library, becoming one of the leading companies for 3D assets.
I'm going to share the thing that was most frustrating to me, which was, why does it always look like when I hit render?
What was the biggest up or mistake that you learned from?
Maxon invited me to go present. I'm surrounded by literally the people that taught me how to do this. Half of you built this program. Oh my gosh, I screwed up. I messed it up. If you're learning, if you're in school, if you're wanting to do these types of things for a living, one of the best things you could do is, learning more about that is the number one thing you could do to make yourself future-proof.
It's Nick, motion graphics artist who quit his job to do a one-year experiment, and now we know it as Greyscalegorilla. Where does the story begin? Nick, welcome to the Bad Decisions podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. It's been awesome. I've been watching some of your other videos, and you guys are killing it, so thanks for having me.
Wow, thank you so much, Nick. Means a lot.
Yeah.
It means so much when you say that. And we just want to say we are so freaking excited to get into the conversation today. There's so many things we want to talk about. But first things first, we want to say thank you and the Greyscalegorilla team for releasing all of your stuff to every 3D artist out there. I mean, the moment you guys opened up to Unreal specifically, we started downloading everything, playing around with everything. So first of all, congratulations. I know that's not just a few days ago. I feel like it was November, right? When you guys opened up to everybody. I just want to say congratulations and thank you. I'm sure a lot of people have been sending you guys messages about the fact that you guys opened up.
No, that was a definitely a big day for us. Thank you guys for downloading it right away. I think a lot of artists are like you're playing in everything, using a little bit of all the 3D packages. And we even had our own customers asking for more compatibility. So it was a no-brainer for us. It was a lot of work behind the scenes, and it's just the start. So stay tuned for more stuff. It's been really, really big for us. Thank you.
No, super pumped for everybody to give it a try. If you guys haven't already, if you're listening and watching, I'm sure by the end of this episode, you'll have enough time to go ahead and check it out for yourself. But this is something we wanted to do with Farhad, so we're going to get right into it. Let's pretend it's a Sunday night. Me and Farhad are on the couch. We open up Netflix. We go to the documentary section. And in the top 10 documentaries in your region, we see the first one. And we're like, holy shit, we know this guy. It's Nick. It's the origin story of Nick. Farhad gets some beer or some coffee, depending on the time of the day. We open it up. And then we're like, okay, chapter 1. What does it say? The summary. Motion graphics artist who quit his job to do a one-year experiment. And now we know it as Greyscalegorilla. So if we open it up, episode number 1, where does the story begin?
Don't they always start with back in his childhood, he would...
Exactly. That's where we want to go.
It has to be a cinematic shot too, by the way.
Yeah. It's got, some modern drone shot. It's, it's over my old house. And it's in this little neighborhood in Michigan. What would that be? So I was and still is, for the most part, a nerdy little kid, interested in how things worked, and I always was fascinated with record players and pianos and juggling and learning how to do magic tricks and yo-yos, and computers were becoming a big thing back then, and every one of those things that I was interested in, I would just always ask the same questions. It'd just always be like, how do you do that? How does that work? Show me how you just played piano like that. Show me how you did that in the video game that you showed me. I was just always curious on how things were done. And I was also really obsessed with behind the scenes. And this was kind of new in the, late 80s, early 90s. I remember my first one was how they made the Thriller Michael Jackson video. We had that on VHS
I
tape.
love that music video, man. I love it.
Yeah, and it was one of those VHS tapes. I'm dating myself, by the way. We could all do the guessing game here. But it was one of those tapes I would just play over and over again. What I found was I would watch the making of way more than I would watch the video. And I loved how they thought about the makeup and how the lighting was and how the cameras were set up, and all that behind the scenes stuff was just so fascinating to me that there was a bunch of, beyond just the artists and the dancers and the musicians, there was another whole crew of creative people behind the scenes that made this thing possible. And I remember even that young, just being fascinated by that. So I think the story, if it's tied to Greyscalegorilla, really starts with that, like how things are made, how interesting things are made, and beautiful things are made. And you fast forward to, the Terminator 2, Jurassic Park behind the scenes. That was such a big phenomenon back then. I learned what industrial light and magic was. I learned that they were making some of this stuff on computers, and that was just like another level of mind explosion for me as, like a young teenager, understanding and seeing really the same thing. A bunch of creative people behind the scenes that were like sitting and working on a computer, which is all I wanted to do as a kid, was like play on the computer all day and making a living out of it. And not just making a living, but like making some of the coolest movies and commercials and TV shows and all this stuff. And so that really was so influential to me. It's always been that way. And as I got to say, as we're in the beginning of the childhood part of the documentary, my parents are a big part of this. So I was really lucky, continue to be lucky to be raised by two very curious, talented people. And they were always helping me answer those questions. Hey, how was it made? My dad could take anything apart and put it back together again. And he was always showing me the like physics and the electricity and the electronics and how things actually were made. And then, my mom is, she's a roller skating coach. So she's a teacher. She's a world-class coach and teacher. And I saw how she interacted with her students and how she was always trying to explain how things are done in a different way until it connected with that specific person. And I took a lot from that. And all those little things combined with the VHS tapes and the behind the scenes and computers getting bigger, where once I saw motion design and understood that was a thing you could do, I was all in. Like that was the turning point for me, as like a 19, 20-year-old looking at MK12 and all of these amazing music videos were like the biggest thing for me. Those director series videos with Spike Jonze and Michel Gondry, and that whole thing was happening. And all of that stuff combined with motion design lit me up in a way that took all of that childhood stuff and put it squarely on After Effects and then eventually Cinema 4D. So that to me is the story of how like just a young nerdy kid like found his way through and actually found a career involving like playing on a computer all day and learning how things work, which is still a huge part of what we do here.
Wow.
Dude, I just want to talk about one thing in the middle of that, which is something you began with. You said curiosity, right? You said that was the driving factor for you. You were always trying to find out how things worked. I want to know if you thought yourself to be an artist in the beginning. Were you an artist from a young age? Were you like drawing? Were you doing any sort of artistic work from an early age?
I would have never, and I still, it's not a term I use for myself. And
interesting.
Artists, at least in my head, especially back then, they had like funny hats and, thin mustaches and they're way cooler than I was. Right. So I never really thought of myself as an artist. And it was more of like a tinkerer and a player of, I was really into magic tricks as a kid. And to me, that's one of the most perfect little experiments for my brain, which was like this thing happened and it's learnable and somebody could show you how they did it. And then at the end, you could turn around and do it to the next person and do that trick. And they say the same thing, like, wow, how did you do that? And to me, that like is that an artist, man, that's a whole nother podcast we got to figure out is like, who is an artist?
What's an artist?
Yeah, what's an
who's
artist? I think today, I think today, an artist has good taste. They know what they want. They have a vision for it. And definitely it's way more than funny hats and mustaches now in my head. I think the world's full of amazing artists. I think people who do industrial design and make things that we use every day, and these microphones and these lights and everything I'm surrounded by in this office. Every one of these people are talented people and artists. I'd call them that for sure. And the whole world, anything that's not trees and dirt and the sun, was made by like a creative, interested person that wanted it to be better and wanted this fork to be better and wanted this water bottle. I mean, look around your room and just name anything that's not trees or dirt. That was a human or a team of humans that decided we want this to be better. We're going to sink our energy into it. And if that's art, let's call that art. But I think it's part of this creative process of humans just wanting things to be better over time and being a part of that like river of ideas, that's how I see it.
So the way that you're explaining art now, does that have any impact of you choosing your studies in college or uni? So were you thinking to yourself that, can I be an artist or should I go to the technical route?
The term designer probably came out of my mouth more than artist, frankly. Mm-hmm. I don't still think this is true, but back then I would think that an artist was more or less making something for themselves or to express maybe an emotion for themselves. And I think a designer, at least why I went to school for motion design and learned and understood like how important typography was and color theory and all these, lighting and materials and like all these things, I eventually was like, oh, this is what this is about. To me, that's more of the study of design and creating and commercial design, frankly. When I think back at the Michael Jackson video and the Terminator, and behind the scenes, those were all commercial projects. That wasn't, Picasso deciding what to make because he just felt like it. These are like things designed to go entertain and entertain other humans for money and like have a commercial or commercials or music videos, like all these things I'm mentioning have a commercial aspect to them. And that part was frankly way more interesting than like drawing for myself or expressing myself as an artist. That's never been my drive. It's always been like, how do I make something compelling that other people could be entertained by? And music videos are as much of a piece of art as anything, but that side of it, this commercial art, commercial design, was really why I went into school and studied how to make beautiful animations, how things are created on a computer, how emotions are brought from someone's mind or from a brand's mind into another group of people. That was the big study for me.
It's so fascinating that you say that, because a lot of people believe that they're not artists or creators because they cannot draw. I myself included, when I was first starting out, we never thought that we could even call ourselves artists because we couldn't draw. That's like the first definition I think a lot of people have when they're young. If you cannot draw really well, then you don't belong into that world. But then it's fascinating when you say that, because when people see you from the outside, if they do not know this story, they're like, look at this guy. This guy's an artist. He has this super successful company. Skills, yeah. He's helping hundreds of thousands of artists. Like, he's definitely an artist. And you didn't even think of yourself to be an artist, which means that technically anybody can be an artist as long as you're creating something. Because we're always creating. That's what you were talking about, right? If we're creating something, then technically you're an artist because you're creating it with your own taste and you're bringing something new to the world. So technically that makes you an artist. And I want to know what happened after that. So you said you studied design. And was it immediately when you were in school, was it like an aha moment, like, this is definitely what I want to do for the rest of my life? Like, I love this. This is exactly what I want to do.
I definitely, there were parts of it I loved and parts of it I honestly really struggled with. Playing with, After Effects and then eventually Cinema 4D, that felt like the ultimate playground to me. That felt like the ultimate domino set and science experiment. And marble machine and pinball machine, all my favorite things from, my past and even now today, combined into this world that I can control all of it. I could control the audio. I was really into audio production and Pro Tools, and that was a big part of growing up for me. After Effects, and then eventually Cinema 4D and motion design in general really attracted all of those skills. So photography and animation and audio and video and VFX and green screen and all those things came together in one piece of software that I could take any of these little bits and smash them together and make an animation. And to me, that was the fun part, like understanding how to make a beautiful rectangle that was like what I saw on TV was the ultimate goal. But I struggled a ton with traditional design, right? So went to art school. They want to teach you typography. They want to teach you layout, and they would have us like cut and paste things out on paper. And I'm like, boring. I want to play with the computer, Give me
the PC.
Yeah, like, come on. You got all these machines sitting here. I want to play with them. And cameras I want to rent out and do all this stuff. And as I went through those classes, I understood like, oh, this is actually what I'm missing. The reason my work was so bad was, one, I was beginner, and a lot of beginners' work is bad, but the real reason was I didn't know all of these design tricks, right? Like,
right.
And I call them tricks, like
the fundamentals.
They're just fundamentals, but it's like I didn't understand that what I was missing was, I'm still so guilty of this. When I open the color picker in After Effects and pick a color for like the floor or something, I would go all the way up and to the right, the most saturated green or the most saturated blue, like it was a pack of crayons. And it would always look like, well, that doesn't look good. And so understanding how colors and how, don't pick the most saturated dang color all the time. Understanding how colors go together, understanding how light is important, understanding how typography, which is a huge part of motion design, how letters come together, what kerning is, how letter spacing exists, like how to leave some damn white space around your object so that, it's easier to read. Like all of those things I really struggled with because it didn't feel like a natural part of what I really wanted to do, which was just play with this stuff. But every time I learned those lessons and implemented it, it made it look better. It actually worked. Holy crap. I can't believe it. So I would always continue to struggle with that. And even into 3D, and maybe, I'm sure we'll get into the story, but 3D was even more technical in a way and had all these physics and dynamics and all these fun things I could play with. But when it really came down to making it look beautiful, I knew I was missing something, but I didn't know how to Google that. Like, if you just Google, like, why are my renders so ugly, it doesn't help you really. And so unlocking that part of making things beautiful, understanding lighting, understanding how, reflections work was really the unlock for me. And I'm sure we'll get to the 3D stuff, but even before that, with photography, with After Effects, that was such a part I struggled with the most, probably.
Wait, listen. Did you know that you can create highly photorealistic scenes with photogrammetry by taking in what exists in the real world into 3D?
We've been using Polycam to do exactly that, using our phone and drone.
Yes, that's right. And guess what? They sponsored this video to give you guys 30% off their pro plan. So you guys can go ahead and try it for yourself.
Use the code BADDECISIONS in the link in the description. I think one thing that you mentioned is super important is the impact of knowing the fundamentals, the color theory, the typography. Nowadays, you can know any 3D software. If you know the basics of lighting, you can use it in Unreal, you can use it in Cinema 4D, you can use it in any software. And I see a lot of problem nowadays. We've worked with many artists. If they don't know the color theory, no matter how good your modeling skills are, your last render wouldn't look good. So I think every artist should really go back to the fundamentals first, learn that, and they can use it in any software, and then they go and learn more into the software of their choice.
Yeah, it's so impactful. I was lucky that I got into photography really early on. So this is early 2000s. Digital cameras were becoming more affordable, and I was in art school. I'm going to carry a camera around with me everywhere I go, and I just started taking hundreds of photos a day, and Greyscalegorilla was originally a Photoblog where I posted one photo a day, and that was my only mission throughout the day, other than school and all the other stuff I had to do.
Wait, you started Greyscalegorilla when you were in college?
Yeah.
The blog?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It was originally just a photo blog, which was also kind of a new thing back then. And I saw some amazing.
Was it called Greyscalegorilla at that time too?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
What was the reason?
Yeah.
For
Why? The short story is my friends and I were making coming up with good and bad ideas for website names. And we were just kind of like brainstorming all these ideas, and I said Greyscalegorilla at first like it was a bad name. Like,
oh my God.
And the more I said it out loud, I'm like, that's actually really fun to say. And I was like, okay, actually, I'm gonna go buy it. I bought it that day. I went and got it, and frankly didn't know quite what to do until, maybe a year later I had this photo blog idea, and I was like, I got the name. Perfect. I'm ready to go.
Wow. So
it's that bad name that I wrote the other day.
You found the name first, then the business came about.
Yeah. It was like, okay, photos are kind of black and white sometimes. I was taking some film photos and playing around with that, and it just kind of fit. I wish if I knew people would still be typing this ridiculously long name into Google as much as they do these days, I would have tried to save you some characters. But it really started as a photo blog, and it was literally just like, I'm going to post a photo a day and try to learn how to make a beautiful rectangle. Like this all fed together, from the VHS tape and behind the scenes, all this stuff fed into. I still really don't understand the fundamentals of how to make a beautiful rectangle that is compelling. And photography ended up being a really simple way for my brain to understand how important lighting, materials, and lens is, and where your camera is in the world, and how impactful that could be. So what photography allowed me to do is, okay, get rid of all the technical stuff for a moment. I don't have to create the world first like you do in cinema. You don't have to put the floor down and put your objects down, put the sun here, and put the world gives us this, a beautiful thing. And all I have to do is like, okay, be in the right place and put my camera in the right position. And that's how I really understood, okay, how light plays off of different objects, and what backlight looks like, and what emotions they bring you. And then, of course, I got into studio photography, and I got really into lights. You get soft boxes. I'm carrying these giant soft boxes into my little teeny Chicago apartment and setting up a studio and understanding, okay, well, that looks awful. Why does this look awful? Well, the light is too flat. It's just like straight on. Okay, it's off to the side. That looks better. And I really had this whole education, literally moving softboxes and lighting around in my apartment and taking thousands and thousands of photos of little objects and my friends, and really understanding how lighting played into all that. And so that education, I mean, obviously that fed my 3D world so much. And I'll share a story later about how that all happened. But that was such an impactful moment for me. Every time I went back to animate in After Effects or learn Cinema 4D, which was all kind of happening at the same time, I would try to carry that stuff with me and bring what I learned about lighting, and more importantly, especially back then, was where my camera was and what lens I was using and how to set up a mood. Cinematography is a thing that not a lot of 3D artists have in the back of their head as they start learning all of this software. But really, at the end of the day, you have to point a camera at something, at whatever you're making, and take a photo or a video of it in 3D. And that is photography. That's cinematography. That's all. It's altography. It's all there.
Altography. It's altography.
Yeah,
We're going to quote that.
That's a very good point, actually.
It's all that is the end of the process. So, when you're building your models and modeling and setting up your world, that is a skill set. That is a very important skill set. But actually taking a compelling image of it is a whole nother part of your brain that has to almost say, like, I don't actually care about how much work I put into this model. I don't care how complex this simulation is. What is compelling to the story and the emotion I'm trying to put on the screen right now? And a lot of times that means putting that beautiful object you just modeled in shadow and not showing all the detail. And you have to have both sides of that in your head. And that took me a long time to really understand that. There were some really helpful people in my life that helped me understand that. And I'll share that story in a bit. But that part of learning, I think a lot of artist, designer, whatever you want to call yourself, people struggle with that. How do I make this thing look good that I just spent 20 hours on? Well, that could be an entirely different skill set that you might be missing, which is one of the photographies. So study them. It's a big part of it.
Absolutely. The transfer of knowledge is real. I totally forgot which guest. I think it was Jim that we brought on, that we were talking about the same concept of transfer of knowledge from cinematography to the 3D world. It matters so much. And I feel like for a lot of 3D artists, if they're listening right now or watching, if you've already had enough of 3D tutorials of the software and you want to look for something new, it is an absolute beast of an opportunity to go and just check out, like you guys mentioned, the fundamentals, right? Color theory, cinematography. There's a lot of books out there. I've only opened a few of them. I'm guilty of this. I haven't really looked into all of them, but I know how helpful they are. Just looking through a few pages will already help you in the next render you're going to do. One of the other things I personally like to do is go to shotdead.com. They have like all of these beautiful shots of different movies. So when I want to do a composition of a shot or a specific lighting, I just try to sort of steal that from a movie that I really like from Dune or even Star Wars we were doing right now for one of our renders. So totally, I totally agree with you guys. The transfer of knowledge is real. Now, let's take it back to the documentary. Greyscalegorilla, right? You mentioned that you started it in college.
As
right?
a bad name. As a bad
name and a Photoblog. What year was that exactly?
That was 2003.
Okay.
2003.
Yeah.
First of all, holy shit, man. Wow. Like the consistency until now, you're crazy. I love it. That's why we got to break this journey down.
I'm just thinking about, if you said you and your friend had different name options, what were the other name options that you chose Greyscalegorilla? What were the other blogs? Do you remember them?
Yeah, so...
Is there any chance?
Yeah, I gave you the short story, so I'll show you the long one. So my friend had a website called Pixel Pig. And
all the different animal kingdoms.
Yeah, and because we were all, jerks to our friends, which is, I think, just what you do when you're 20-something years old. We're all like, that's the worst name ever. Like, we're all just sitting around at the bar like, that's awful. And he's like, well, I want it to be an animal. I want it to be like a design thing. And we're like, we're going to come up with 20 better names than this thing right now. And we just start, saying, names out loud, like CMYK kangaroo. And we're just like, I don't know, like animal color thing. We're just saying all these dumb ideas. And I said Greyscalegorilla. And I was literally instantly in my head, I was like, that's awful. And immediately after that, I found myself saying it. I was like, actually, that one's really fun. It's kind of catchy. And so I bought it that night. So, It all came from this kind of stupid friend thing, and I wish I had the list of, or I wish I could record that conversation and remember the 20 other ones. I'm sure my friends might remember a few more of those.
Wow. The next time you're at a bar with your friends, just start throwing out some horrible names.
Buy the domains and then
buy the domain that you never know. 10, 20 years later, you might be running one of the most successful companies
I think
that same name.
I think I watched a podcast that you did 11 years ago. It was, the quality was for 11 years ago.
Yes.
The guy who started the podcast started saying some blog names. And I think one of them was your friend's blog and then a few other random names.
One of them was your mom's better than my mom, or my mom's better than your mom, or something like that.
That was in your group of friends that you guys made that name too?
That was my website. So I bought My Mom is Better Than Your Mom. I bought my dad could kick your dad's ass.
Oh my God.
My sister is awesome.com. And this is just when, even back then, it felt like a lot of the big website names were gone. But man, it was so much easier back in the early 2000s to go buy some of these, fun, stupid names,
Wow.
And I still have way too many URLs. There's like 100 of them sitting there, like with something to do. This was just a part of, I've always had little business ideas and ideas for all this stuff, and the iPhone apps and all the other parts of kind of my career through this. I would just buy these URLs, and I don't think the family ones, I still own them. I just don't know if they're there, but forever you could type in my dad could kick your dad's ass, and my dad would show up on a website. I gotta go make sure that's working.
I think you should keep those URLs. I sometimes see those news articles about someone selling a URL for like $5 million because some company wants them. You never know, man. You never know when they're gonna come for you.
Yeah, I got make cool shit. And somebody actually reached out. Is like, you want to sell this thing? So keep your URLs. Keep your URLs, folks.
One question that I have: was it easy for you to find job right after you finished your education?
Yeah, it was. I think a lot of it was that I was in Chicago. I think if I was in some other markets, it would be a little bit harder. But I had a job right away. I was doing freelance for Digital Kitchen and some other studios around Chicago while I was finishing school. And a lot of that is because of the website stuff I was doing, because I was willing to share online what I was up to. And especially back then, I think a big one was getting out and going to the meetups and going and meeting other people in the industry before I needed the job. And I think that's still true today. If you're learning, if you're in school, if you're wanting to do these types of things for a living, one of the best things you could do is while you're still a student, while you're still in school, go to all the meetups, even the professional ones. Like, hey, all the Blender, Unreal people are meeting up at this event. Go to that thing, and if you have to travel, if you can afford it, go. And introduce yourself. Say, hey, I'm a student. I'm learning. I'm into this. Just wanted to meet everybody, and share your story. Share your work when it's appropriate, and maybe follow up down the road. But every first job and second job and third job and freelance gig that I had was because I went out and met these people, and just showed up as an excited kid, like, oh man, I can't wait to like do this. And eventually they would ask for my work, and when they're like, yeah, we got room for you, come join us on this pitch or whatever. And so I think that's still true. I don't. COVID killed a lot of those meetups and stuff. I think they're coming back, but I would encourage anybody to go physically meet the people, go to the big events, go to SIGGRAPH, NAB, whatever the big thing is in your world, and just, introduce yourself and be a part of that crowd. Because then when you do need the job, man, you have somebody to call, and you were there before you needed something. You were there meeting these people before it's like, hey, can you hire me now? You don't know me. It's a lot easier if you go start early with that stuff. So I think that was a big part of it.
That's a very important lesson. I think what you did was really genius, because you already showed up in all these meetings without any expectation in the early days. And when the time came, it was a no-brainer for all the people because they knew you, they have seen your work. And it was very difficult. That time there was no social media, right? How you were only sharing it on your blog.
Yep.
And then you had to give your blog's URL to people to check your work.
I think the blog was like the equivalent of Insta Reels right now. Like people were just doing the blogs back then.
Yeah, and this is before YouTube. It's like you couldn't even post videos without it costing a bunch of money on your own server. And so you needed your own site. And I had my creamy orange. I had my portfolio back then, and there were forums. So instead of Discord and Twitter and all that stuff, there were forums. So mograph.net was a big one, where a lot of people I still see at a lot of conferences kind of started and communicated. And this was when people had questions about software and how it works, even about the industry. They would post it on this forum, And that was really where a lot of connections happen as well that weren't in person. And even the idea that I could teach and show people some of the things that I've learned, because, while now we have all of our assets and plugins and all these things we do at Greyscalegorilla, a lot of the very beginning stuff was just literally showing online what I was learning. And so a lot of that stuff all came together with some of my early jobs on, just people knowing who you are. That's really some of the hardest things you got to figure out as trying to get a job where you want on projects that you want, is having other people understand that you exist and that you're good and that you're easy to work with and all these things. And it is very difficult to do without showing people and just being out there. So it was much more difficult back then, that's for sure. So definitely, have your reel ready when the right person shows up to ask.
Absolutely. And then when you joined Digital Kitchen, how was your experience like working there as an artist?
It was amazing. It was some of my favorite, working in the industry proper. I didn't quite know what to expect. And to be honest, my first job right out of college was at a bigger studio. They were kind of like one of the last real big Mad Men kind of studios, with the drink cart going around and fancy steak dinners and stuff. I was like, well, that's all cool, but I just want to make fun stuff. And we didn't get to make a lot of super interesting, fun stuff. Certainly nothing that felt like a Michael Jackson video or a Michel Gondry video. And Digital Kitchen was always on my radar as someone who, as a company and as a team that did amazing work. And so when I started talking with them, it was a no-brainer for me. I mean, it was, the office was not as nice,
no steak dinners.
No steak dinners. They really did take care of at least me and from what I saw, a lot of the artists there. But it was a completely different thing. It was more about the work. It was more about what you were making and how to make it interesting and how to make it cool and how to make it eye-catching and grab attention. And that was the most interesting part for me. So the amount I learned just being around artists like that a lot of them had intuitive sense of emotion and how to light and how to do these subtle little things to pull emotions out of you. And I learned so much by being around that group of talented people. So that couple of years there at Digital Kitchen was an amazing learning experience for how a team made stuff. But they all, that was where I really dug into 3D and had the space to learn way more about After Effects, of course, but really understand 3D and how important that was going to be in my career. I didn't know at that point.
Wow. And at this point, what is happening to Greyscalegorilla.com? Is it still Photoblog or you have changed it already?
Yeah, so it was still a Photoblog. I was still posting a photo a day. And I did that for 3 or 4 years, I think, throughout all this, like end of college through my first few years of working in the industry. But then there was a new part of the blog, which was called /blog. /blog was also a kind of a new thing back then, was just a blog. Like, here's what I'm watching. Here's a cool YouTube video I found. Here's, a photo I took, and then people started asking me, hey, honestly, people were asking me the same thing I asked back in the day. I was like, how did you make that? What camera did you use? What lens was it? Show us how you use Photoshop to get that effect. I was emulating film looks back then. And people would ask these questions. And so I started posting tutorials and videos and images and little recipe cards. Like, here's how I get this effect, and just literally showing people what I've learned over the years. And that part of Greyscalegorilla, the blog where I was teaching things, ended up becoming what really was Greyscalegorilla as a business, which was like, people started asking about After Effects. That's what I really did for a living. this photography thing was like a fun side project. They go, wait, you make motion design. You work at Digital Kitchen. Why don't you show us After Effects stuff? Started doing that. And then, of course, as I got into 3D, I started doing tutorials in that world as well. And, you know, Cinema 4D was like the ultimate for me. It did everything, and it was more intuitive. And I just always loved 3D. It was always too complex for my brain. But Cinema 4D really, I finally understood it. And it unlocked a whole new whole new floor of my brain to go explore into. And so Greyscalegorilla really started in that way, which was, I'll just show you literally the stuff I'm learning by being around all these amazing, talented people. I'm going to share with you some of the lessons I'm learning for Cinema 4D, how to make it look good. And that's really the most important part, was how to make this stuff look good. Because that was the hardest thing for me to learn. So I figured that's probably the hardest thing for people out there to learn. And there's way more talented modelers. There's way more talented, MoGraph, complex, crazy espresso artists. But look, if you follow me, I'm going to show you how I figured out all this stuff to make it look good. That was the real missing point for me.
There's something beautiful about doing something daily. I'm thinking that we're slowly discovering this, because we did daily vlogs before we found out what Bad Decision Studio was all about. And we found out that, hey, people... Actually, the same fucking thing happened. Now that I think about it, we were doing daily vlogs for 45 days straight. Every day, editing until 3 a.m. and then uploading the video. And then towards the very end of it, we were running out of things to talk about, things to do. So then we were working in Unreal and working with photogrammetry and all that. So we said, okay, why don't we make a video about this? And in the moment we started making a video about that,
people started liking it. Yeah.
The views went from 200 to 1,000. And then they were like, hey, you're doing this. Why don't you talk more about photogrammetry and Unreal Engine? And so that's how we found out our route. It's so funny when you say that. It clicked with me. We had a guest on the podcast just about a few weeks ago, Hallie. Her episode is not out yet. Actually, it will be by the time you guys listen to this. She also did a daily challenge. And the more I'm listening to all these daily activities, I feel like
there's a superpower with daily activities.
Yes. One, because of the consistency, the discipline that you get through the dailies, because you cannot stop. You make a promise to yourself. But I think not only you yourself can find yourself, people around you and people who watch your work can help you find what you actually want to do. And it's quite interesting that you brought that up. I just wanted to point that out.
I think it's super important. Actually, right before the podcast started, we talked about how you guys record once a week, no matter what. And I think that's a part of that too. This consistency. There's really beautiful artistic pressure when it comes to a daily deadline. And to me, that's what all of these things represent, is deadlines. If you can set for yourself a deadline and hit it, you're all immediately above 80% of the other people who are playing in these 3D apps, right? Like that's one of the most, it's one of the hardest things to do, is to take a piece of art or design or 3D or whatever you call it and say, okay, I'm sure I can make this better. I'm sure if I spend another 20 hours, I could tweak it. I'm sure I could do this, but you know what? We have a deadline here and it's got to go out. And then tomorrow I get to do it again. Beeple's been doing his art every day for over 10 years now, right? And what you learn is how to hit a deadline. You learn, you get to try different things. So as you try to find your style or what you're into, you can actually go make a space scene today, and then a cartoony MoGraph thing tomorrow, and then a character animation the next day. You can actually explore different ideas because you have this cadence. So rather than spend a year working on one thing with one style, or even a month working on one thing with one style, do it every day, do it every other day, do it every week, whatever that is for you, set it and do it. And if you're worried about it, that it's going to be, for the rest of your life, set a season. Maybe just say like, hey, for 90 days, for 30 days, for this year, I'm going to do it. And at the end of the year, I'm going to decide if I'm going to do it again, but I'm not going to break. I'm just going to do it.
I swear to God, if you do it, the growth that you'll see after the 90
You don't
days,
want to stop it.
You don't
it's
stop.
like drugs. It's addiction. You do not want to stop. But at the same time, it's quite difficult. I mean, the promise that you make to yourself is going to lead to you saying no to a lot of your friends and to your family because of the daily work that you have to put in, or weekly, depending on whatever task you're trying to take on. I have a question for you. Of course, you talked about all these moments in your life, and there's still so much more to discover, but even up until this moment, of course, there were struggles. Even with, posting on the blog, there are times that you have to spend every day on the blog while working at Digital Kitchen, while doing the college work, and you have to balance time. You have to say no to people because you have this commitment. How important was this commitment to you, and how did you say no? Because I feel like a lot of people, myself included, up until the moment Bad Decision Studio started, it was so hard to commit to something, right? And a lot of people don't ever get to do that in their lifetime. So I want to know where was the source of inspiration and motivation for you to keep going?
I saw myself obsessed with it. I saw myself learning more about photography and lighting and lenses and what they all like. I saw what that did to my creative part of my brain when I put the pressure on. And so the idea that I had to post something and show it to the world, and there was no Instagram, it was just my own website back then. But as more and more people came to it, the pressure went up. And it was a good pressure. I think stress and pressure in a creative way could be really, really compelling. It could be addictive. It could be a good reason to go get better at your craft. And so when I saw that, I knew that I had to hit this deadline no matter what. And when it came to saying no to things, I'd still go out. I'd still go see my friends and go to the bar and go meet up here, go to these meetups. But I'm bringing my camera with me if I didn't take anything good. And I think that it just became such a part of a habit that it didn't really affect a lot of things in a big way. I think a lot of people just knew, hey, Nick's going to have his camera here with him because that's what he does. And I should say photography is a lot different than like a daily render where you have to stay home. You have to do it yourself. And I think that just comes with understanding how you work and putting your own deadlines in place. So, there's a whole discussion we could have about, work-life balance and making sure you have time for family and friends and all these things. But I think there is a part of at least my career, and I hear this story a lot, where you kind of need to disappear a little bit. You kind of can't go to everything. You can't go to every party. And you have to understand where, the hook that you can create in your brain that will help you become a better artist, that will teach you something that you'll learn, that you'll use for the rest of your life. And whether that's traditional school or these deadlines or a daily practice, understanding the purpose and understanding that you need to make a promise to yourself and then keep it, I think is, as a human, one of the biggest things you could figure out how to do. And then take that energy and take that ability that you have now, that you can promise yourself that you're going to do something and do it, and apply it to your family, and then apply it to your relationships, and apply it to your friends. I think it's, for me, any creative task is something I have to be alone and work on and practice, and then show up in the world and then show that I could do it. And I think that these being able to say no to certain things, to say yes to the promise you made to yourself, is one of the hardest things humans can figure out for themselves. So don't think of it as just, hey, this is me playing on a computer. This is you creating your life. I mean, this is you understanding what you want to do with your life and your time and your energy and your creativity and your interest, and putting a practice or a schedule or a project around it, and then actually frickin' doing it. you know how many people don't do that? You know, people have ideas for a movie or a TV show or commercial or like, you know, just an idea and then don't do shit about it. That's most people. So what we're talking about is one of the hardest things to do. And I just encourage anybody out there that's like, I've always wanted to, I can't find the time. Definitely don't abandon your family and your relationships and things you have, but understand, like, if you're younger as well, this helps. Set some time aside for your creative energy and your creative project, whatever this is. I'm keeping this vague because this is the same for almost any dang job.
Everybody.
It's everybody. Like everybody is like reading these, you know, for me, it was like these books with animals in them and that had like all these jobs. They're like, you get a doctor, you're a fireman, you know, like, here's what you're going to do for a living. And now that most of us have jobs that look like this, it's like computers, camera, you know, sitting in front of a computer for it all day. We all have this mission for ourselves on how we're going to take this interest and energy and convert it into something hopefully creative. If you are creative, I'm imagining anyone watching feels creative, and actually make a living out of it. Man, what we're talking about is exactly that. Like, practice and put energy into it. So that turned into a rant that is a lot bigger than a daily practice for your art. But I just think it's that important. You have to keep the promise to yourself that you're going to put energy into this, and then, you know, decide after it's done if you want to do it again. And that's life, man. That's all, everything.
This is so true. It reminded me of what Elon Musk's ex-wife was describing him, and she was saying
The TED Talk? Was it
yes,
TED Talk?
she was saying he was able to say no to many things because he had a big yes inside of him. He promised himself something that he could say no to anything, and it wasn't difficult for him. And we can say now what he have achieved. And what you said is very, very true. When you give that promise to yourself, when you tell yourself that I'm going to do this no matter what, photography, even out of the creative work, even if it's gym, working out, studying for your final exam, if you promise yourself to get something and then you stick to that promise, it's very easy to say no to other things, to distractions. And when you get the result once, twice, it will be much easier for you to keep doing it for the rest of your life.
And you know, I heard something about confidence, how every time you promise something to yourself and you don't do it, you break a part of your confidence. And that's how you become somebody who is not confident, because you keep making these promises to yourself. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to learn this skill. I'm going to, you know, do daily renders. And then you keep telling yourself that, but you never actually do them. That's the road to having the most... I would say it's not the best way to live in, right? It's not the best life to live because you keep making these promises, and that's why you probably are not a confident person. I used to live that life. There was a lot of things I wanted to do as a young kid, and I never did. But then eventually I managed to turn that around. And
Do you remember how we started this podcast? We wanted to always start the podcast, but it was one Wednesday. I clearly remember Farah said, we have to just start this week. I don't care if we don't have topic. I don't care if we don't have equipment. We have to start this week, and it's going to be every week. And since then, we haven't stopped. If we were thinking about the equipment, let's find the first guest, let's find the first topic, it would never happen.
And you know what's the funny thing, Nick? I think it's about time for the anniversary of the podcast.
Yes, it's almost
time. And we just told ourselves the other day, hey, if we just said, you know what, let's just push it back. We don't have the right equipment. Let's just push it back another week. It could have been 1 year now, and we haven't even started. But it just feels like nothing. Like it feels like there was no effort done because it went by so fast, and it was easy. Actually, now I look back at it, I'm so glad we started it. And that's why this applies to everything else. I feel like if people are thinking of starting Houdini or Blender or Unreal, it could literally be a decision you make tomorrow, and next year you look back, you're like this freaking pro making dope ass renders. But you just have to make that decision to start. And I feel like a lot of people are just waiting. I don't know what they're waiting for.
If you are listening to this, please, if you want to do something, go and do it right after this. Promise to yourself and go and do it.
By the way,
Nick, thank you for saying that. Wow.
Absolutely. And we said it in a vague way, and I like the working out metaphor, but let's just say it in a like a animation, 3D, whatever you're trying to do.
Yes.
If you're listening to this and you're like, I want to do this more, post an image today and put it on your Instagram, put it on your Twitter, like whatever you're on, put it on your Facebook, like it doesn't matter. But start the practice of putting something out, because there's a huge difference that from playing every day with no real goal, maybe watching a tutorial, learning something, not putting it into practice, and feeling like you're making progress towards something, but not really doing the hardest part of this, which is finishing something and posting it. And if you're going to do this for a living at all, now if you're just playing and that's all your whole goal is, play. There's no rules to that. If you want to do this for a living and have clients and have a 3D or creative career, you have to have deadlines. You have to be creative in a certain amount of time. You have to know when it's done. You have to know when it's good enough to be done. You got to know when it's like, nah, it's not quite there yet. And learn how you take that pressure and live with it. And it's not easy. And you're going to post ugly stuff. You're going to post stuff you're more proud of than you're not. But start that progress, because you're 100% right. This podcast you're doing a year later is probably going to be better than the first one you did, because you did, 50 of them, whatever the anniversary is, right? Like that's going to make it better, not reading another book about it. That could help. You want to do that on the in-between days or in the morning, but you got to do it and actually follow through with it and edit it and check the audio levels like you guys do and post it. And then learn and read the comments and do better the next time. So whatever that is for anyone out there, 100% right. I'm with you guys. It's like post now and decide on your cadence. 1 a day, every other day, once a week, and just stick to it. Just do 3 in a row, 5 in a row, 10 in a row, whatever you can mentally think through, and you'll be really surprised with what comes out of it.
Best freaking advice, man. Thank you for that. I really appreciate that. I want to talk about one thing you mentioned in another podcast. You said that you don't have to be an expert to teach. You just have to be a passionate learner and a teacher. A lot of people don't know what to post about. And for you, well, you started with photography. Of course, you had the Photoblog. And then people asked you to teach After Effects. You taught that. And then Cinema 4D, I believe that you were just starting out. But then when people asked you, you decided to teach it. I want you to talk about that experience, because so many people don't put up their work because they feel like it's not good enough, and they wait, but that moment never comes, right? And they never ever put their stuff on the internet.
Did you ever think like, who am I to teach? I just learned it like last year. Am I even qualified to teach this stuff?
Oh, for sure, especially Cinema 4D. I still feel that way. I've been dude, like there's way better artists, and there's people that know the program way more than I ever will. And there always will be. But for me, teaching, some of my teachers are my favorite people growing up, my coaches and just everything I've been a part of. And I don't think any of them were the best ever in their field, and that's what made them a good teacher. They were a good teacher because they know how to communicate what the student needs and talk to them in a different way, or explain in a different way, or send them in a different direction. And so to me, first of all, education hugely important for everything. And when it came time for me to do a tutorial, I certainly had that feeling. People were like, hey, how did you make that 3D render? And I'm like, guys, it's just it's a bunch of spheres and a with an HDRI on it. They're like, we don't know anything about this program. Like how, or they would watch some of those tutorials that I watched and realize nobody's showing them how to make the lighting look good. Nobody's showing them how to set the camera up and not use the damn default 36 millimeter lens. If you're using the 36 millimeter lens, 35, whatever they changed it to, don't bank that apart. Like, don't do it. Take that lens off your camera and put the lens on that you want. You're the artist. So nobody was teaching those things. And by the way, I have to tell the story about Chad Ashley because he's so influential in this. So Chad's our creative director here at Greyscalegorilla. But back then, in these stories we're telling, he was such an influential part of learning how to make beautiful things. And when I met Chad, he was a 3D artist. He was using 3ds Max, I think, at the time. And I just loved his work. It was so amazing. And I did the same thing I did with every damn thing in my life. How'd you do it? And man, Chad grabbed a seat, sat me down. He's like, check this out. I did this and checked. And his lighting was beautiful and his material choices, and it was very cinematic, and it was just beautiful. And I quickly learned from him, like, oh, all of these things that are important in photography when I'm learning all this photography stuff just carries right into 3D. I didn't even make that connection until Chad said it. And I'll talk about training in a second, but it's so important because it was so influential in how I became a trainer and a teacher of how to do things. Chad was such a huge part of that. What he did was, first of all, make the connection that I already knew a lot of this from photography. And he's like, dude, don't use the default lens, man. What lens would you shoot if you shot something teeny tiny, trying to make it shallow depth of field? What lens would you use? I'd be like, oh, I'd use like a 100mm micro lens. I'm like, cool. You don't even have to go buy it. It's free, dude. You just type in 100. You know how expensive a macro lens is for like a college student? I had to go buy this stuff. It's glass and plastic and metal. In 3D, anyone listening with any 3D package could just go type in the lens they want, and you get it. And so I started, and honestly, Chad was so influential in like, hey man, you do studio lighting. Aren't you playing around with studio lights in your apartment? I'm like, yeah. He's like, all right, that's why you're using like a point light in Cinema 4D, and no wonder it looks like shit. All these hard shadows. There's no reflections. There's nothing to reflect. Like, here's how the real world works. Like, you got to build this in. Here's how HDRIs work. Here's how area lights work. Like, put some soft shadows in this thing. And it unlocked a completely new world in Cinema 4D for me. So now I'll answer your actual question. So when it came time to teach, when people were asking me, like, how did you do that? That was to me the unlock for, well, there's way more talented people that could teach you how to model, and way more talented people that literally build Cinema 4D, that work at Maxon, that could show you all the ins and outs and all the technical stuff and how this stuff works and how to script and how to code and animate walk cycles. Oh my gosh, all these things I still don't know how to do. But I'm going to share the thing that was most frustrating to me, which was, why does it always look like shit? Why does it look like a floating thing in space when I hit render? And I never wanted it to look like that. I wanted it to look like it was in a studio or in a field outside, or, man, it was all about lighting, and it was all about materials, and it was all about your camera. And those three things were the fundamentals of teaching in Greyscalegorilla that I not enough people were doing at the time, but I think that was the thing that set us apart. So while I just use spheres, I still use spheres. Why? Because we're not talking about the complexities of every little aspect of this program. We're talking about how to make a mood and a vibe and a look. And for that, you can kind of do that with anything. So let's just grab some objects. Let's make a little scene. But what we're really learning here is how to make it look a certain way. You want to make it look bright and fun? Well, use these materials and use this lighting. You want to make it dark and spooky? Well, pull your camera down and look up at it and put a backlight on it. And we could use all the same objects and learn these lessons there. So to me, when I started doing tutorials, I definitely had that imposter syndrome. Like, guys, I literally just learned this 3 months ago. Why you want me to teach you? But over time, I realized those are the best teachers. The teacher you really want is somebody who is a little bit above you, that could pull you one ladder rung up. Because if you go talk to a high-end professional 3D artist right now, it's very rare that they're going to be a great teacher for a beginner. Now, they might be a great teacher for a level 8 3D artist to pull them up, but you're kind of wasting their time a little bit too. You don't want them to teach you like how to open a scene file and save it and all this, like you really want someone just above where you are to pull you up. And luckily that's really what early Greyscalegorilla represented, was like, we're all learning this as fast as we can. We're just like maybe 6 months or a year ahead of you guys, and we're going to pull you up right along with us. And everybody that joined us back in the day kind of like learned right along with everything we did. And and the ones that wanted to do this for a living did. Like we learned the fundamentals together. We Cinema 4D got better over time, and you know, the motion design community got bigger over time, and we all kind of came up together. So that was how there, you know, I definitely overthought, you know, should I be teaching all this stuff? But once that unlocked for me, I was like, okay, this is actually perfect. We're just going to literally share what we're learning. And if anyone is learning at, you know, in the same kind of space, like we're just going to be there for them. And what's great is, because now YouTube and Vimeo existed, at least back then, anyone can watch it over time. Like even if you're 2 years behind us, when you're ready, hopefully you could search and find us and just start from scratch and go all the way up to where we were and be a better artist.
Wow.
You know why that's incredible, right? Do you remember Andrew Price, Blender Guru, said the exact same thing? He said, I was not fully comfortable with Blender when I started teaching about the donut. And if it was anybody else in his position, I think they would have just not done it because they thought, you know what, who am I to do this? But he decided to do it. And guess what? There was millions of people who were one level below him, and they just wanted to know their way around the software and make that freaking donut. And the fact that you did the same thing, it's so beautiful. And the reason why we specifically wanted to ask this question is because we believe in content creation and how content today, I think a lot of people overthink it. They think that, oh, I have to go in front of the camera, I have to record, I have to know the algorithm. But at the end of the day, it's just a way to have a portfolio. It's just a new medium, right, for portfolios. And like you mentioned, you don't have to do much. If you just want to just put one render every day to start, that's totally fine. But you have to start somewhere. And a lot of people who want to take it further, they don't know what to do. They're like, oh, should I make memes or should I do this? I'm like, just teach people what you know. That's like the simplest content to do and the best, because you're actually giving value to people. And we found such beauty in educational content. There's no way, if you asked me and Farah just about a year ago, do you guys think after your vlogs you'll be doing meta human tutorials? No way. But the moment you do one and then you see all those comments from people saying, oh my God, thank you, you saved my time, or all these beautiful comments, you're like, holy shit, let's make it part 2, let's make it part 3, let's make it part 4. And you're doing it for free technically until YouTube pays you a lot of money. But technically at first it's free, and it's just the vibe that you get from people that you just want to give back. So yeah, that's something I wanted to talk about from that.
I want to know also, because you were posting a lot, how did you handle critics? Because of course you will get a lot of positive messages, but there should be some critics, haters in the comments, or I don't know if there was comment section that time, but there will be somewhere, you know?
For sure. Yeah, I mean, there are definitely comments and there are definitely haters too. Yeah. There definitely was a group that was also correct. Like, didn't you just learn this? How are you the teacher for this? Or, you know, I kind of famously use very simple shapes, very simple setups to teach these concepts. And, you know, they're right. Like, oh, I get more shiny spheres, right? Like, are we going to move beyond this? And I think when it comes to critics, the ones that actually matter are the ones that you kind of feel are saying something correct about yourself. You know, like, hey, you say like too much, or you say too much. I'll be like, damn, I do. They're right. That's a good comment. Thank you. I'm gonna write that down. I'm gonna work on that. Or technical things. That's probably not as much of a hater, but like, hey, there's an easier way to do this. I think comments and criticism is so helpful. I think for the most part, what it represents is someone not connecting with what you're doing. And so that could just be my haircut, my voice, or whatever. Like, a lot of this is personality driven, and that's okay. That's what's great about today. If you don't, there's a bunch of voices online, and if you don't like them, there's another person that'll teach you Blender or whatever. And so I think other than that stuff, the obvious, like, I'm just not into you, that criticism is a part of the creative process. And so, you know, we could talk about anything in particular. There's definitely, you know, criticism that comes up that when it hits you and your brain goes, ah, shit, they're kind of right. Like, I think it actually is a helpful process in the creative process. Like, how can I be better at this? But then of course, when they're like, ah, screw you, you're the worst, I'm like, I don't know about that. I don't think I really agree with that. Those are a little bit easier to, just kind of float by, I think, even for me. But yeah, I think for criticism, if you're going to do a creative job for a living, feedback, critical comments, hey, this isn't what I expected, hey, do better next time, that's like a part of being in this career. So I always took it, and when I did well at it, I always took it as a time to even learn if I needed to do something better when the critics were right, and blow it off and say, like, that's not what I'm trying to do here, so I don't need to listen to that group of people when it just didn't make sense for me and my career and my life. So it always sucks. 100 nice comments, are nice, and I love them, but you get the one bad one, you're like, oh man.
Yeah. Why?
Yes. It's so true,
but it's stopping so many people from posting. It's
yes,
stopping
definitely.
so many people,
yes.
And we told ourselves that we are not gonna look at these comments, but to be very honest, some of them are hilarious.
Yeah.
Some of them are so funny. Sometimes, like, okay,
you got me. Okay,
you got me.
Fair enough. But I love the way you look at it. You look at it as a tool to improve yourself. If they're constructive, if you think there's some truth to what they're saying, you try to self-analyze and then try to improve, which is what we try to do as well. And I think that's what actually fucks up with my head sometimes, because I look at a comment and I don't want to believe it, but then the next day I'm thinking, was my render really ugly? Like, was there something wrong with the camera? Maybe he's right. And then I try to self-analyze. And as long as you can do that and try to be honest with yourself, I think you can handle most of the critical comments that come through. But again, I love the way you approached it. I want to talk a little bit again about your time at Digital Kitchen. So when you joined in, how long were you there for at Digital Kitchen before you went ahead and started Greyscalegorilla and moved on to your own thing?
Yeah, so I think I was at Digital Kitchen for about just over 2 years, maybe 2.5, 3 years. And so, yeah, that was about it. Like, the blog was already happening. The videos, the tutorials I was starting to do in my spare time was already happening. But Digital Kitchen was really where I fell in love with 3D. I came into Digital Kitchen as an After Effects artist, compositor, animator, like a lover of After Effects and everything it could do in the 3D world. And all my actual 3D friends, including Chad Ashley, was like, why don't you learn a real 3D program? Why are you trying to fly a camera around in After Effects? And the short answer was like, well, that's because that's what MK12 did. I'm just trying to do that. And it's like, you could do so much if you just, learned a real 3D program. So it was at Digital Kitchen where, my obsession with Cinema 4D really took off, and because I was working there, I was able to sit and learn 3D, like not just from Chad, but from, there was some places online, but mostly DVDs. I could go buy the DVD and go watch people from around the world, like, teach me through these things. But that was always the missing part. So many of these things I was learning just was always missing the how to make it look good chapter. I was like, there's a missing chapter here, and that's what Chad Ashley was so amazing at doing. I remember. So I'll try to make this short, because the documentary is getting long here, but.
No, you don't. It's all good, man. We're loving this.
So I was learning and playing in 3D, but again, mostly I was doing After Effects for a job. Like, that's what I was getting paid to do at Digital Kitchen. And at the same time, Digital Kitchen had a real 3D department. That was a whole separate department that did amazing VFX 3D work. And then there was me and my little group that was doing more 2D, flat, more motion design kind of stuff. And I was learning Cinema 4D, and at that time, they were starting to get bids for jobs that were more motion design 3D. I remember the first one was Target. So Target was coming out with like a pharmaceutical part of their store in the back. It was all their drugstore basically in the back. And they wanted this animation where all these pills came down and made the Target logo. And they called Digital Kitchen. And so literally Digital Kitchen's like, hey, 3D team, they need this. And that team was like, dude, we're too busy. And that's kind of like, that's like a simple little trick, like you just make stuff fall. Like that's for someone else to do. And we're too busy like making, lions jump around in 3D and stuff like that. And so they asked me that literally at Digital Kitchen, they're like, hey, we got this thing and they want these pills. You think you could do it? We see you learning 3D and, this is kind of a good start basic project, but it's like a white studio with pills falling down and the camera moves up and it's the Target logo. I was like, I think I could do it. And I remember like just jumping in full force, like learning it all night long, all morning, figuring it out, setting a render off overnight. And in that moment, I would send Chad my renders. So Chad Ashley, we've invoked Chad Ashley now like 4 times. So Chad's our creative director here at Greyscalegorilla. And because he's like so influential in the start of this company. So as we grew, he was an obvious choice for someone who actually has done 3D way longer than I have. That brings so much of this. It's such a big part of my career and also the start of Greyscalegorilla that it's just amazing that he's here working with us. So Chad was my go-to person. I would do these Target renders overnight and I would send them to him and he would go, oh, talk about critical feedback. He'd be like, oh, dude, your shadows, like you got to make it more like I remember very specific. He's like, make the softbox like 30% bigger and make your shadows add like 3% blue to your shadows. And I was like,
wow,
3% blue. Who the hell's going to notice 3% blue? No kidding. I would do it exactly what he said, like a little bit softer shadow, little bit of color, a little bit of color in the shadow, re-render it, and it would be beautiful. Like he just nailed it. And I'm like, how are they not teaching 3% blue in the shadows in my school? Like, how did I A, not know this lesson? But B, how does someone like Chad just see a render and just intuitively understand it and know it? So all those things were again how Greyscalegorilla got started was like, okay, I'm actually learning these amazing tricks and techniques from the most amazing artists in a lot of them, most amazing artists in the world here, like working in Chicago. And that's where the real start of Greyscalegorilla came from,
But when did you make the decision that you want to? Because when I was checking out the other podcast, you mentioned you took a 1-year experiment break from Digital Kitchen and then you wanted to go into Greyscalegorilla.
Oh.
So when was that decision?
When was the bad decision made?
Oh, yeah, that's good. Well, good. Okay, we're talking business now. This stuff's fun.
Yes.
So that decision probably started a year before I did it. And I knew that this blog that I was doing and posting a photo a day and the tutorials and was just I was obsessed over it. I was obsessed over learning.
Were you making money?
Yeah, I was making some money on it. I think we had a Photoshop training course. I think that was the first product on Greyscalegorilla. And I don't think it made a ton of money, but it was kind of the first experiment in like, is this entrepreneurial thing. Excuse me. Now we're talking the real start of things. So now I lose my voice.
Yes.
So yeah, the business and entrepreneurship, all that stuff was very interesting to me. Around the same time, I also made some iPhone apps that were selling on the store as well. So the iPhone was new, the App Store was new, and I took a lot of that photography, how to make digital photos look like film, and I built iPhone apps out of that study that I had. And I had some pretty successful iPhone apps on the store back before in-app purchases and all that. It was 99 cents on the store. And that taught me a lot about the business side of things. And it gave me a taste of creating something that was, just an idea and packaging it up into a beautiful experience and putting a price tag on it and seeing if this is interesting for other people. And so as that became something, like seeing how the App Store worked and how to drive traffic and how to get interest in those things, and then the blog itself, the Greyscalegorilla, and making tutorials and starting to make little products there, I felt so much excitement for that, and I loved doing it. I loved when people would give comments, and I was helping people, and they were learning at the same time I was. There was something so compelling about it. So I said to myself, okay, I'm going to take every dollar I make from this iPhone thing that was starting to have money come in, and just pretend it's not mine. I'm going to live like the poor college student I really still am here. I'm not making a bunch of money at DK, and save every dollar of this iPhone money. And when I have enough to basically live for a year, like, ramen noodles and beer, like, and iced coffee, like when I have enough for that, I'm going to take a year off and I'm going to put all of my energy into this Greyscalegorilla thing and see if it's a thing. And, I was excited. The audience was growing. The internet was still kind of new. It felt like back then there's like so many things to go play with. And so I want to say October 2009, somewhere around there, made it official, made an actual business, and started Greyscalegorilla, and went off and put a year into, we talked about a photo a day. It was like every day was a new adventure on how to make a better website, how to make a better training video, how to make a better, at that time, we started making some very basic plugins for Cinema 4D, how to make that, how to package it up, how to make it easier to install, how to make it easier to use, and really start to understand like how I could take these things I was learning and this experience I had and create products and training and experiences that would help thousands of other people in their career. And so that was the start of it. So it was 1 year, and basically I had the deal with Digital Kitchen. I was like, hey, I'm going to take off for a year. I still love you guys. Like I still love working here. I have this idea and opportunity I want to go try. And they legit told me, they're like, hey, as long as you still have your hands in the air, like you're welcome back. Like come back. We'll figure something out. So that was the real start.
Sorry. There's so much to crack
need to wait.
down. We gotta hold up.
That decision, we need to really pause on that.
This is the bad decisions
so many
part.
aspects of it. Yes, this is the bad decision part. You want to go first, or I go
There's
first?
two things, but I just want to start with one first, and then later you go, and then I go, because oh god, there's so many. Okay, first things first. I'm gonna pretend that this is not my money. Let's talk about that, because me and Farhad had this thing when we wanted to start Bad Decision Studio. We had this. I remember precisely. We had this triangle that we drew on the board, and one part said MetaHuman, another part said augmented reality,
VR,
and then another part said VR. We didn't know which path we should take. This was before the vlog started, and this is about like 9 months ago, a year ago, and we were trying to think about which route we should take, but one thing we needed to have was the runway. So we started saving up just enough so that we can last 6 months or a year, like knowing that
we could fire all the clients and then work on one of these things full time.
Just do our own thing. So we needed to have that runway. So I want to get the concept from you when you said, I'm going to pretend like this is not my money. How did you deal with that? Where did you learn that from? And how did you start that? So how much money did you put away? How much was enough, to have as a runway?
I think a lot of learning about it came from, there were a lot of businesses in Chicago that felt like startups, but what they were really were like bootstrap startups. So 37 Signals that turned into Basecamp, that's one of them. Kudal Partners, they made Field Notes, if you know those beautiful little books that they make. And like Threadless, I think those are the three companies in Chicago that were doing creative things and beautiful things and sharing their process, right? Like they were just talking out loud about how they created their company and how they think through things. And one of the things that Basecamp did, they were called 37 Signals back then. They were a creative agency. They did websites and other designs for big companies. And they started this idea that they're going to sell this product called Basecamp. They built it for themselves, I think, at first, and then they started understanding this could be useful for anybody. And the way that they thought about it was, okay, well, all this is going to do at first is just replace one of our clients. They said, we're not going to get out of the business altogether. We're making money, making websites, but if we could just say no to one client and do this as one of our clients, basically like build our business as a client, then that is it's like a brain technology that allows you to still do what you're doing, but put that money aside and say, okay, this is still a client paying us money, but all the money is actually ours. Like it's up to us on what we create. And that was really influential to me. Kudal Partners has a very similar story with Field Notes and how they started building their own products. And that's how I interpreted what they were doing. And I said, okay, this money coming in from iPhone apps this is an experiment in creating an idea in a business, a creative idea, and making it good enough and an excellent experience so that other people in the market see the value and actually want to trade literally $1 for what I was doing in the store. Mm-hmm. And that to me was kind of back to our daily photo a day kind of thing. That was the experiment. That was the process. And that money in my mind was set aside to do more of that. Like it wasn't to go upgrade my apartment or upgrade my car or, what a lot of other people do when money starts showing up. It's like, no. That's not what this money is here to do. This money is to allow me to run more experiments and play in this playground and follow my interest into this world of the unknown and know that my rent can be paid and know that I could still get a beer and a nice coffee and like live, So that's how I saw it in my head. It was like, this isn't for current Nick. This money is for future Nick. It was still mine. It was still, a part of it, but it wasn't, it was for a specific purpose. And to me, the enough was basically once I saved almost as much as like a year of my salary, I left. And luckily this iPhone app thing, like iPhone was taken off and we got in all these magazines and publications and the app's still out there. You can download Shake It Photo on the App Store. I don't and all of that was like an experiment that funded future experiments so that it allowed me to play around and understand and be able to dive deeper into these ideas without having to worry about short-term money, without having to worry about my rent or like staying alive. Like that was just the cushion around the playground I was building, if that makes sense.
Wow.
Definitely. But that was the financial side of things. How did you handle the people side of things? Family, wife or girlfriend at that time, friends, the peers, colleagues. When you said that, you started a job, you're good at it, you are, excelling, you're going up. Mm-hmm. Didn't they tell you that was a bad decision? Don't do it.
Yeah, there were definitely some confused faces of like, I was working at working at one of the best studios in Chicago right out of school, basically a year out of school. I was working at this place and really loving it there and doing some amazing work. My last job at Digital Kitchen was doing the Conan O'Brien title sequence for the Tonight Show. And I was huge Conan fan. That was amazing to work with Conan and work with his team and go out to LA and make something. I thought that that Tonight Show thing would be on air for years and years. Unfortunately, he didn't stay at the Tonight Show long enough, but I was doing really interesting, cool work with really talented people. And so it was a little bit of a like, why now and why do all this? And definitely, some friends also had that too, but I was lucky to have a pretty big group of like creative friends that mostly built their own world. The traditional career was never super interesting to me. I love work, but I don't work at regular hours. I would stay up late, and a lot of those things just don't fit into a traditional career. And so I always knew I needed to kind of own my time a little bit more, even just for how my brain worked, and I loved staying up all night and working on one of my own projects. So it definitely was, it was a big decision, but I had the safety net. Like, hey, it doesn't work. Again, even if Digital Kitchen was like, nah, sorry, we don't want to hire you anymore. Like, I knew that I could take my skill set at somewhere and at least not die, like at least get, pay my rent. So in some ways it was a big leap and a big experiment. And in some ways it was like, all right, well, I do have the ability to, go back into the design industry if I needed to,
I love that. And I just want to say something about what you said when you said, when the money comes in from the iPhone app, I'm not going to be using that to scale up my lifestyle. Because that is definitely the first thing that people do. Again, we've been through this. I remember getting my first paycheck. I wanted to spend it on going out that same fucking weekend. I wanted to go out and spend the money. And it's fine if you do it in the beginning, but then when that goal or that dream presents itself to you, I feel like that's when you have to really think about putting time and money and energy aside for that. And also one more thing is celebration. I feel like actually, this is something I read about Drake. They asked Drake, how do you win so many awards? And how do you release so many albums? And every single one of them wins awards. He said, when the album's out and I win an award, I'm maybe celebrate that night, but the next day I'm in the studio. I'm not celebrating for a month. I'm not popping champagnes every day after that to celebrate, because it's normal now. And that's why he can win so many awards and be so successful in his career. So I feel like one of the lessons we've learned as well is about the podcast itself was, for instance, we are not going to spend all of our money on the hardware. We're just going to start the podcast, right? Basically do everything with the simplest setup, right? We're not going to spend the least amount of money just to show ourselves that we can do this. We can pull it off. And then eventually we'll spend on the equipment. Eventually we'll upgrade. And I feel like you can apply that to everything. And so the idea of scaling up your lifestyle, that was a very important thing that I think you mentioned. Now I want to talk about the experiment itself, the 1-year experiment. How did that go? What were the first months like? Was it a lot of, oh shit, what am I doing? Or no, you kind of knew what you were getting yourself into and it went pretty smooth?
Man, there was a lot of lessons early on. I think the biggest one was, now that I really had the time to myself to do what I really wanted to do, which was, make new products, make new tutorials, adjust the website, make a better footer, like all, understand how WordPress works, hook up how to, build a better landing page and explain that. Like, that was all clear to me. Like, that was a lot of learning and a lot of experimenting, but that was the obvious fun thing I wanted to go do. Learn Cinema 4D like all day, like just like play in this world. The hard things that I didn't know were how I work as a human now that I control 100% of my time. And I think that now that a lot of us work from home, that wasn't as popular back then. A lot of us work from home. We're all in this world, even if we have a more traditional career. Those were some of the hardest things to figure out. Like, I learned really early on, like, I couldn't just put sweatpants on and go into my office and feel like I was working. And I would still play, and I would still, it's not like I would procrastinate, but there was a completely different feeling from actually like taking a shower, putting on real clothes, and like sitting in my office, even though it was at my apartment. So really, I think it's specific to everyone, but it's really like understanding how you work. Understanding how you get your best work done. Are you a morning person? Are you a night person? How do you build deadlines around yourself? How how do you say no to the things you need to say no to say yes to the things you want to say yes to? Like those actual things we talked about, like just a half hour ago about the daily practice. Really, those are the hard things. Those were the things to figure out. Like, is this product ready to ship, or do I need to start from scratch and rebuild it using a different code base? Do I stress out about the name of this thing? You know how long I stressed out about the name LightKit Pro? Yeah, I could tell you the 20 bad names, and LightKit Pro, you could decide if that's a good or bad name. But like, does it matter? Should I ship it? Like, those are the things that I had to learn now that it was all up to me. And so those were the struggles early on. For the most part, though, it was a blast. It was like, oh man, I could wake up and I could decide what fun thing I wanted to experiment and play with. So I guess thinking back on it, it really was that. It was like, with all these things I could go do, what are the things I'm definitely going to do and stick to a schedule and get it out? Because I only have a year here, guys. I got to figure this out and see if this is an actual business and if this is something I want to do for a year. Like, how do I figure this out? So it was really like the cadence and how often things came out, and understanding how like to run a business. I got to do customer support now. How do I build that into the schedule? I have to, when it was just me on my own, like, how do I fit in all the other things I want to do and go visit my family and go back home and go on a ski trip, or like all these things. So
did you ever feel like going back and giving up at one night, like 1 a.m., 2 a.m., like, and then you look at yourself like, what am I doing? I should have gone back. Why am I doing this?
I don't think I had that. There were definitely very frustrating moments with not wanting to do certain parts of that job. And I don't think I would have traded that in for a traditional career. It's just not at all where my head was at the time. I was very excited to be able to play with all this stuff. And I could share stories about things not working for sure. We've put out plugins or ideas or videos or tutorials that just, were not at all what I thought they were going to be.
Okay, actually, you know what? Let's stay on that. What was the biggest fuck up or mistake that you made that you learned from in maybe that 1 year?
Oh gosh. What's a real good one? There's so many like little things you learn, but I'm trying to think of like the biggest one. There were quite a few things I would put in a tutorial because I was learning from scratch. And actually, I remember one time I got invited to go to NAB. So Maxon invited me to go present and talk about like imposter syndrome. I'm like, dude, I'm like, I'm surrounded by literally the people that kind of, some of you taught me how to do this. Half of you built this program. And here I am in Vegas at a trade show booth, literally showing how to take a book. So take a book and then take the cover of the book. This was actually a book from 37 Signals called Rework. And I did an animation for them. And I showed people how I did it. And I took the cube and I, squished the cube down. And then I literally just wrapped the cover of the book around it. And the sides were all screwed up. I didn't quite understand how UV mapping worked, but I just cube mapped it. But it kind of stretched it out till it looked good. And I set it up and I dropped it on the ground. And then I spent, half of that video just showing how I lit it, like all the little details, like you get the little glint here. And then, the cover, when the book lands, you get that cross of the light that kind of gives you that little iPod shadow going through. And I would set up all this stuff and I get done. And one of the, developers, trainers, people that have been at Maxon for a long time, he's like, you literally took a cube and dropped it on the ground. That was your entire presentation. Like, that's your tutorial. Like, oh my gosh. And immediately I was like, oh my gosh, like I screwed up. Like I messed it up. Like I'm just showing, I literally just showed how I made this commercial of, essentially for a friend, like a group of friends of mine. And I screwed up. Like I completely messed it up. I clearly have no clue what I'm doing. And they were right. The thing is when, talk about criticism, is like, they were right. I didn't know. Like I didn't understand UV mapping at all. And I got as good as I could with the understanding I had and with the tools I had. And what also happened right after that was there's a giant group of people commenting when they saw it, like, oh, that's exactly what I needed, right? So I got both things right at once. I got this like completely screwed up, like I have no clue. I got so much to learn about how, this amazing piece of software works. And at the same time, I had a whole group of people like, okay, thank you for spending most of your time on actually making it look good. And so there was like this amazing lesson there that was kind of heartbreaking, but also like affirming on I was going down the right track at the same time. So I kind of got both, like the bad and the good feeling all at once. That was a big day for me standing in Vegas.
Wow.
That's a big lesson though.
Yeah.
Because it's like whatever you create, there's always going to be the positive and negative, but you just have to keep in mind that there's always going to be a group of people that you can help, right?
Yeah, 100%. When was, I want to know, when was the time that you told yourself, this is going to work, Greyscalegorilla all the way, we're going to do it during that 1 year experiment period? Was there a moment that, oh my God, we made it, this is 100, I'm not going to go back anymore? This is
I think it's probably when Transform came out. Yeah. Trying to think what date that was. So one of the things that was really hard was hiring, understanding that part of it. Maybe that's actually a better like bad part of the story is like the good news was there was success here. Like I don't think I had to go back to my job and do all these things. Like there was a lot of excitement here. There was this whole new generation of people learning 3D, and we were there for it. And what I realized was I needed help. Like I needed to build a team around this. This isn't just, Nick's bedroom here anymore. This is, if we're really going to help, millions of people here, like over the next 20 years, I didn't know we'd be around that long, but I need to be good at hiring and bringing people in the team that are actually better at me at these things. And so I was lucky enough to bump into Chris Schmidt very early in my Cinema 4D career. And he talked about someone who just knows every aspect of that program. And he was in Chicago. He was running the local Cinema 4D Chicago meetup. And we were fast buddies and really good partners in a way that he was very technical and very understood how to code and how to make software really, really well, and understood Cinema 4D honestly better than a lot of people who make Cinema 4D do. He's incredible. And then I was like, how to build the product out of it, how to make it easy to use, how to make it look good, and also how to package it, market it, and get the word out and make a video about it. And so we became really good like partners in that way, like in this. And when we put out Transform, man, that was a big product for us to build and have an idea around. And it was a lot more complex code than, some HDRIs and early stuff that we were working on. And it was just an amazing moment of seeing people grab it and then start making stuff with it. So we started getting animations back, people using it in their own projects. We would a year later walk around NAB and half the booths were using it in their animations, like they were using Transform. And that connection of building something that actually was on a commercial or actually was on a Super Bowl ad, or our own customers would start emailing us and saying, hey, here's the Super Bowl ad that, Transform will be on, or Like It Pro will be on, or eventually Signal will be on. And even today with all the material collections and all the amazing stuff we're putting out now, it's like that is fun to actually put out and make great stuff. But when our customers send it to us and they're like, here it is, like in use on the MSG Sphere or in the Super Bowl ad or whatever, that's when I know, like, when those things started happening in the company, that's when I knew, like, okay, this is a real thing. Now I'm a part of the behind the scenes. Now I'm a part of that group of nerds around a camera, when they panned in the Terminator 2 behind the scenes. Like, people are using our tools, people are using our stuff in actual real production. And so every time that happens, there's like that's the exciting moment for me, where I'm like, okay, we're on the right path. This is super fun. And this is actually some of the most like fulfilling reasons we do it, is seeing really amazing work come out of our audience, like our community. And when they share it with us, we're like, this is awesome. That's the moment.
Dude, you know what's hilarious? We had Max Berman, co-founder of Kitbash 3D, on the podcast. We asked him what was the reason behind him starting Kitbash 3D and also motivating him. He said the first day when we released it, the next day, or actually on the same day, somebody sent them posted a photo using a kit. And that was when the addiction started. And the fact that you said the same thing, it just shows that, I think, when it comes to the entrepreneurial mindset, right? When you create a product and see people use it and actually help them in their workflows, that's what drives you to keep creating better products, to keep helping people. And I just wanted to share that because it's the first common thread that I found here, which is beautiful.
No, it's
so
it's
at
important.
that time, how many people were in Greyscalegorilla? Was it two of you, or
I think it was just you right in the beginning.
in the beginning was you, and then your friend joined you, Chris, right? And then and then now
it was. So it was me in a bedroom for a year or two. Chris joined, and we eventually worked in the same office, but we were kind of both at home and doing our thing separately for a few years. And then we started working at a friend's office, and that's when we started actually hiring. So hired Jacqueline, who's still at the company. She started doing customer support. Now she's head of operations. She's like such an amazing part of the company. And that's when we really started to like actually become a business and understand.
When did Chad join? You mentioned Chad so many times. We want to know, when did he join the company?
So he was relatively early on as well. He's probably coming up on 8-9 years, I'm guessing. So that was one of those unlocks for me. And I got to share the story because I think it's anyone out there trying to build something bigger than just what you can do. I think it's really important because it took me a long time to understand this. I used to think, man, this would go so much easier if there were like 20 of me. Like if I could just duplicate myself, then this would go so much faster. Like I'd just have extra time and we could all work together. We'd all be in the same mind and like we'd just get all this done. And the more I hire and work with amazing people and build an incredible team, the more I realize like that is an awful idea. Like nobody wants 20 Nicks on a team. That is not a high functioning, well-rounded team. That is a team full of people who are really good at one thing and then really crappy at a bunch of other things. And even if you duplicate yourself 100 times, you still have the same problem, which is you're good at certain things and not so good at other things. And so hiring Jacqueline was an early version of this. Man, she's way more organized and way more on time, like with all these things, like so helpful in running a business. Working with Chris was a good example. He had completely different skill set, but we worked well together. But a friend of mine who's also an entrepreneur, and we've become friends over the years. He asked this question like, "Hey, if you got sick and just had to take like a year off work to live, like you literally would die if you just worked another day. Like who would you put in charge right now? Like who do you think could like do as good a job or even a better job or whatever?" And this was like a thought experiment that he had. And he later said that people usually say like Steve Jobs or some person, some big person. And I immediately had the answer, which was like, who'd be really good at this is my buddy Chad Ashley. Like he was kind of fundamental in helping me understand all the power of what 3D is and how to make it look good. And he understood product really well. He's a way better designer and 3D artist than I'll ever be, and a great mentor and a great coach. Like, and he's good on camera too. Like he could even do some of these tutorials. Like, he'd actually be really good. And he goes, holy crap, this guy? He's like, who this person that you would want to do this? And I go, yeah. He goes, you think he might want to work with you? And I was like, you know what? He might. And then
you have it.
And we're growing. We're like, we're seriously growing up as a company back then. And it was so amazing because, I mean, if you know Chad and you've known his history, he's just one of the best artists and one of the best mentors. Like he builds incredible teams, and I've known him for years. And so immediately this was an amazing idea to go talk to him and see if this was a good fit. And, he's worked at Digital Kitchen for a lot of years and worked all over the 3D industry, doing amazing stuff, building amazing teams. I was like, how would you like to be the creative director here and help us really step up the next level of what we're about to do here at the company? And he joined. I mean, he's so influential now in the quality of the assets and the materials that we've put out over the last. If you've been looking at the material collections and what we've been doing, that's Chad and his whole team that he's built now too. So I feel like I could talk about Chad for hours, but he like as a hire, unlocking someone that is actually better at me at a lot of those pieces of the puzzle was such an eye opener as a founder. It's like, oh, you don't want 20 of yourself. You want people who are different from you and better at that, so that you can actually do what you're best at. And you hire this well-rounded team that can do what they do best. And Chad's such an amazing example of that, because he took a lot of things that I actually was pretty good at, making products and making plugins and making assets and all these things. And he just took it to an incredible level that up leveled everything and what our customers are able to use and the quality of our materials. And now we have this whole, material capture process that he's, built and designed from scratch in Chicago and built a whole team around it. And it allows us to put out like the highest quality stuff because of that one hire, because of this one amazing creative director, and helps us like build the next version of this entire company.
That is so true. You want to build a team that is filling in each other's weaknesses, right? And that's why you're looking for all these missing pieces of the puzzle. Of course, for you to be able to hire and scale up the business, you have to put a lot of the money back into the business. And I feel like the reason why a lot of businesses might fail as well, very much just like how independent artists might fail, is because they never save up enough. When you were scaling Greyscalegorilla, or just maybe even in the beginning, how much of the money that you made did you put back into Greyscalegorilla, the business?
Most of it over the years.
It's like the same as individual life, right? You put aside, reinvest back, business, the same thing.
Yeah, I think like the early example with the iPhone apps and all that stuff. I think if you think of every dollar that comes in as your dollar, it could get very tricky. And honestly, I think it can slow down opportunities and growth and hiring and all these things I wasn't great at. And honestly, I wasn't very sophisticated in that way, in the business way, and until I learned more about it. Same as anything, like you don't know about it until you learn about it. Mm-hmm. And so as I started learning about how small companies become medium-sized companies, I mean, we're still a small company. We're 25 people now, but in the grand scheme of things, like, you're still a small business until you're like 80 people or 100 people. But going from 2 or 3 or 4 to 25, man, that's a big jump. And it takes money, right? Like it takes great hires, it takes good people, it takes treating them well and building, giving people space to like build their office into how they work best, right? Like all the things I learned about myself and how I worked best really influenced how we grew and how we created the world that I could invent. I mean, that's really anyone starting their own business, whether it's just you in a room in a computer or you want to build it out. You're building a set of rules that you control that is almost entirely up to you. And so as the company grew, a lot of decisions we made were like, how do we, make sure nobody has to ask to go to the dentist? Like one of those things, like when I had a real jobby job, like I really got to fill out a form because I got to leave the office for an hour and come back. Like really. So as we grew, like those things take money, they take budgets, they take, a lot of that stuff. And if you separate yourself from like this, all of these dollars are mine. No. All of these dollars are Greyscalegorilla dollars. In fact, all of these dollars come from customers who are trusting you to create amazing things into the future as well. And so that's how I kind of see a lot of this is we have a lot of big things we're working on. We have these, you mentioned it at the beginning of the podcast. We have this whole new platform that allows you to use all of our stuff in any 3D application. And that's a big team, right? Like that's a whole development team, design team to be able to bring what we do to more 3D apps. And that's like Greyscalegorilla as a team and as a budget. And it's definitely about making sure you put money back into what you're trying to build. And there's different ways to do it. There's lifestyle businesses and there's, very, pull all the money out and make it as light as possible. But we're building something that we want to be around in 10, 20 years and be even more impactful and help even more people. And so that's kind of how I see that part of it.
How do you prioritize? Because now that you're expanding, you have a bigger teams, and I'm sure you have more ideas because now the ideas are not only coming from you, it's coming from Chad, it's coming from different members of the teams. But again, human resources, budgets are limited. How do you guys pick what ideas to go and venture next? What are the experiments that you guys want to try? Is it based on the impact on the community, or you guys want to try reach more people? How do you basically think of the prioritization?
Yeah, like right now we're on a mission to take what we've built and bring it to more artists. We had this, and to answer the questions, like that's the priority, at least right now. So the big priority is always to help 3D artists. Like that's why this thing started. I was in that same boat. Chad Ashley, a lot of our team, work in the industry and understand how 3D artists are struggling to like make amazing stuff with shrinking budgets and less time and higher pressure from their boss or their community or their client. And so our whole goal is like, let's make amazing stuff that helps you work faster, make more beautiful renders so that you can also live your life and go home and pet the dog and kiss the babies and do your thing because you're using amazing tools to speed all this up and make it beautiful. That mission, that bigger mission is always there. The priority on like how to pick what to work on is it's a big discussion. It's like, a whole team full of smart, amazing people that all have great ideas, and how do you pick the right one? But we try to pick what helps the most people. So something that could be very impactful to the final, to the person who's actually using it. And in fact, I think when we make the best decisions, it's from the lens of the customer. What impacts them the most? And when we really think about like the artist sitting there trying to make beautiful stuff or looking at the TV commercial, like wondering how they can get that look in their 3D app even faster. When we make decisions on making software or make the flow of it easier and how to use it easier, and it genuinely impacts someone's day every day, that's when we know we're doing our best work. So that's a lot of the lens we look at is like, what is most impactful for the member? Look, we have members who join and if you remember, you get everything we ever make, right? It's all inside of this membership. So what's really great is we don't have to have an idea that we have to package up and put in a product and sell for $50 or $100 or anything. We can actually just have very simple, beautiful ideas like our color palettes or our gobos or our LUTs or anything like dust, like any of these, or the new material collection, something that we know is going to be impactful for that person. We could just include it in the list for the year and know that it's going to be impactful for the most people. So a real specific example is our current mission, right? Like take especially the assets that we've had for Cinema 4D and actually bring them to the broader 3D landscape. And this is something we think about a lot. Like we sat and had discussions for the last couple years over where the market is going as far as 3D software and how artists are using all this stuff. When we started, Greyscalegorilla was obviously only for Cinema 4D, but that's because that's how the industry worked. Like you latched onto one piece of software and you and your team used it, and that was it. Like pretty much you used one piece of software to do everything. And if you couldn't do it in cinema, maybe you hired a RealFlow expert for the day, but for the most part, you're like, we can't do it.
Yeah.
No, we see that going away. Like this has been a trend happening over the last few years, but it's accelerating like crazy, which is even our own Cinema 4D customers are using Unreal to do real time and incorporate experiential and even video game experiences. They're using Houdini and they're making procedural, crazy, complex, systems over there, and then maybe importing it into cinema. They're playing with Blender. They're using Substance, and like the fact that they couldn't bring their favorite materials and lights and tools with them into all these other worlds was like hurting the experience of our own customers. So right now, that's our big priority right now. And like you guys said, it's like we launched version 1 of it late last year. Now you could use all of our assets, download them, use them anywhere you want. And then we even made, software to make it easier in Unreal and Blender and Houdini. So when you talk about priority, like that's how we look at priority, like what impacts the most amount of people and what makes it easier for them to do their job every day.
It's amazing when you mentioned about your membership model, because Faraz, remember when you started using Greyscalegorilla, one thing that he immediately mentioned was how easy it is now that when you pay the subscription, now you have access to everything.
Yeah.
So you don't have to pick and choose, because as artists, I mean, we are not a very big studio, but our needs changes daily and based on projects. Today we are making a spaceship, tomorrow might be an Egyptian documentary, the day after might be something else. The fact that you have access to everything, it makes it so easy, and it makes it so easy for the artist to also be relaxed and be the member.
To be comfortable, because I don't know what I want. I need to that's my style of working. I need to get into software. I need to mess around with 10, 20, 30 materials until I'm like, that works. Some people might know I need this specific gold material with that scratchy roughness on top of it. But I don't know. I need to try all 20, 30, 40 different materials until I'm like, okay, this is the look. And I feel like for those people like myself, it's frustrating to have any other sort of membership model. What you guys have done, you guys have nailed it, because I feel comfortable. I'm just like, okay, you know what? I'm subscribed to this. I got it monthly. Every time I have a project, I just open your website, and you guys have made a beautiful landing page, and also the way you look at the different categories. It's so interesting because I don't even know if I want that fucking material, but the photo of it looks really nice. I don't know who did that, if it's Chad or his team. The photo of it, the thumbnail of it looks really nice. I'm going to go and mess around with those materials now. So I think that's why I personally enjoy using Greyscalegorilla, and I'd recommend everybody who hasn't already give it a try, especially now that it's open to a lot of different softwares. What do you think is the future of Greyscalegorilla? What would you like the future of Greyscalegorilla to be, if there's a coming soon to part 2 of this documentary?
The future is always hard to try to plan on, especially in the 3D world, especially in tech world.
Yeah.
There's so much going on there. honestly, there always is in technology in the 3D space, but with AI happening and all this stuff, it's like the future is just always changing. So I'll say two things. The future of Greyscalegorilla is our mission. It's really the same mission we had when we were helping 100 people and then 1,000 people and now hundreds of thousands of people and you know, is to help more 3D artists do their best work. I want anyone out there that was like me and was like, why are my renders so ugly? To have an actual answer, which is lighting and materials and where you put your camera and how you set that up is really the most fundamental part of 3D. And no matter how much geometry you throw in this scene, if you have crappy lighting or no lighting, nothing's going to show up. And if you have, you know, your basic crappy materials, that's what it's going to look like. And so I want every artist out there that's like, what is missing to understand what actually is important when it comes to 3D, which are these fundamentals: great lighting, great materials, and great cameras. And then also have a place so that they don't have to be experts in any of this stuff to have the best. If you want to go make a material from scratch and make it look amazing, that is very difficult. and you should go learn that and figure some of those things out. But as an artist out there trying to make a living, I want to build the ultimate toolbox that you can jump into, just like you said, and see something beautiful that either inspires what you're working on or exactly solves your problem. Oh, I need studio lighting. Oh, I'm working with a lot of reflective materials. We have lighting exactly for that. You're trying to recreate this studio look. You can go read the book and actually figure out where they set the lights up, or just feel like you could use this HDRI, which is designed exactly for this. And to me, that's what Greyscalegorilla represents, is the highest quality and most tasteful versions of these things. You can go get a free brick material anywhere, right, guys? We all know this. But when it comes to things that have taste, when it comes to things that have quality, when it comes to things that all work together in the same scene, that a lot of other places don't do. When it comes to not having to worry about credits and just experimenting and playing, just like you said, a lot of our competition has credits and they limit you in what you could use. We want to let you explore and be free and try new things. And so to me, that there's more of that. Like that is our mission. We want to help more artists. We're seeing the 3D space explode. We're seeing so many new artists play with Blender and Unreal. We want to also bring these things to that audience. I think everyone's going to go through that moment, whether you're a beginner trying to understand what makes things look good, or you're a professional and you're like, look, I don't have time to make all this stuff from scratch. And you just want a box of amazing tools that other artists have built. That's what we want to represent. So that's number one, is expanding how many people we could help. And then number two is some of this other stuff, like honestly, a lot of the other stuff we talked about today, how to be helpful in helping other creative people build a career out of this. And that is a whole other level of fulfillment, especially for me as the founder. And I know a lot of our team sees this. When people actually build their own company and their own career on top of amazing software like Cinema 4D and Unreal and all this stuff, and Greyscalegorilla, like we're a part now of this ecosystem that helps a team or a company do amazing work. Like that's the future. Let me just say one more thing about the future, which is important. No matter where all this stuff goes, understanding how to make a beautiful, compelling rectangle is really what most of our jobs will continue to be. So we're going all the way back to the fundamentals now, going all the way back to the beginning of the whole thing. Understanding how beautiful things are made, how to get emotions out of people, how lighting, how cameras, how color works, how humans see these things does not change. Like at the end of the day, there's always a human watching a thing that you're going to make that you need to communicate something with. learning more about that is the number one thing you could do to make yourself future proof, whatever happens. Learn how to communicate and be creative. And then obviously use tools, use things that speed it all up, but understand when to say, yes, this is the motion I'm going for, and how to get it. And the future will become a lot less scary for everyone out there.
Dude, that last part was so fucking beautiful. I'm going to keep that in mind, because sometimes we get so caught up with the technicality of the software, especially if you're new to the software, that you're just thinking about all these buttons and all that. You forget about the one thing, that what emotion are you trying to evoke? And that goes back, like you said, sometimes to the fundamentals. So I'll keep that in mind. I really appreciate that. It's really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Nick, I honestly, there's a couple of topics that I think will take us another 2 hours to discuss. And in no way or shape or form is this podcast done, because I definitely feel like we need to do a part 2. And I want to, there was the concept of education, and there's so much that we can go down to with that. But, I do not want to take more of your time, but we have to definitely do a part 2. Go down and talk about education. I cannot wait to do
Love
that.
it.
Is that agreed? Can we agree to that?
Yes, 100%.
Oh, I'm in. Yeah, I mean, education is such an important part of this. I'm down. Yeah, let's go. Part 2. Stay tuned.
Okay.
Wait, you got to make the trailer for the next the next video.
We are going to do that. I promise you we're going to do that. It's been honestly a blast talking to you. I personally learned so much from the way you started, your mentality going into the entrepreneurial journey, and how you look at things. And there's so many little gems for a lot of people to pick up on. So again, thank you so much for your time. We're going to leave all of the links to Greyscalegorilla, to some of the interviews you've done in the past that we referred to in this podcast, in the description below, so that people can go check it out. So once again, Nick, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. It's been awesome. Thanks for having me.
No worries at all. And for everybody watching and listening, we will see you guys on the next episode. Until then, ciao.